Hi. So I've had to record this video a couple of times. First time that I recorded this video, I got interrupted. Second time I recorded this video, I had to do some munging with AWS credentials to get things in just the right shape because I had flubbed them a bit. And then the third time, I got it all right and the audio didn't record. So today, actually, it's raining and hopefully it's not too loud because it's been hailing and stuff as well. It really boils down to some simple things though, and I think I can largely, I guess, how do I explain? I can largely summarize in a couple of PRs and changes. So this PR came through, and prior to this PR, what we did was we actually turned the application that Actions is into a little Rocket app. And if you don't know what Rocket is, it's like Sinatra or Flask or other HTTP frameworks. So that gave us the ability to package it up into a Docker file that we could quickly just run. An example is, let's see here, cd actions, docker run. Let's run this guy. Okay. Now, that's not running. That's a bit weird. Okay, well, point is, we want to find one of these. Might be this one. There you go. So you see here we've got hold on. We've got our little Rocket example going, and all it does is just say hello, right? And then what I did was I created a new repository for the deployment service. And the deployment service is really just a Rocket app with two endpoints, and I haven't fitted out any of that. But the two endpoints would be deploy the latest thing, whatever is the maximum latest value, and the other thing would be deploy a very specific version. So back to our example of concurrency problems with deployments. If you have person A make a change in a CI pipeline and person B make a change, and person B's build number is higher than person A's, you want to deploy that version. The problem is that GitHub Actions don't support build numbers yet. Maybe they will. I don't know. I saw some hacks to make this happen. Before doing this video, I had a bunch of thoughts around what is the best possible way that I could describe this process without having to use something like Google Cloud or AWS. But really, in the end, it was the simplest thing to do, to use AWS S3. Just because it's something I know, I'm really comfortable with it, and it was quick and easy for me to get it going because GitHub Actions actually has an AWS CLI action. I could have just as easily used Google Cloud Storage or anything else. In fact, if we had used a database solution, regardless of wherever it came from, we could use the primary key of every row that we insert as the highest build number, right? Or the version number that we want to deploy or look for. Okay? So if you look in how we change the GitHub workflow for this project, you'll see that we uncommented out this and changed it into this. Now, in order to get AWS S3 to work like any other thing, and again, I'm not endorsing any of these people, I had to provision some secrets, and what you do is you go to settings and there's a secrets tab, and then you provide the environment variable name and then the secret context, right? And now I can just do this. And I mostly just snipped this from the official documentation. I did actually have to go fishing for it a bit because for some reason the documentation was reverted from the old style of specifying GitHub Actions to the new YAML style, but it wasn't a big deal. So I took this and we named it write out content for artifact, and publish artifact and publish marker are two distinct things. where all that they do is they copy something, this publish script, to the particular path in this bucket, GitHub SHA publish, right? And then here with publish marker, we say AWS access, we say S3 copy latest, which is the marker file, okay? And that just always replaces whatever the latest is. Now, this is a bit problematic, and this is what's going to cause concurrency issues for people clobbering other people's deployments. If we had a build number or some monotonically increasing number, we could circumvent this by basically saying, hey, I only want to copy or replace this. If, in fact, you would blow away this marker file, right? You would say whatever the latest publication is, but then in the deployment service, you could say, well, what's higher, right? Is there something higher than what's here? And in fact, if you were doing, so there's a couple of different ways that you could do this, right? You could check for what the actual highest number is, and if it's higher than what you're about to publish, then you don't publish it as the latest. On the flip side, the deployment service could have some knowledge about where deployments are stored, like if it was a database, Postgres, MySQL, whatever, you name it, Aurora, Bigtable, Dynamo, it doesn't really matter. You could pull out a primary key, as long as it had a primary key, and then say, hey, I actually want the highest primary key available, okay? So what do we actually store up there as our deployment artifact? If you go down here to publish deployment, we previously, I think about 2 or 3 videos back, we had a bin publish script that was doing specifically the release artifact publication. So it was like logging into the GitHub package repository, it was building the image, and then it was pushing that image, okay? Now what we do is we create a purpose-built shell script that has the exact GitHub SHAs specified, and we write that out as our publish file that we're about to upload to this bucket plus this prefix. So if you look at this, the point is that if I went here, right, I could run this. You don't have to have a script-based approach like this. It could be a specification for something like Kubernetes or CoreOS or whatever. It could be really simple groupings of configuration files that just say, hey, I work with these other versions of artifacts. It doesn't have to be prescriptive like this. The deployment server could run one command. It could be a generic execution framework for other commands. If you trust where the input is coming from, like in this case we would, then all is well, right? What we actually did was lock down the, what was it? We locked down the AWS user that pushes these keys by having a purpose-built policy that says that they can only put objects to CI actions star, right? And so as long as those credentials don't get leaked, right, you can relatively trust that this would be in the right form. And we could get more specific too, right? We could say it has to be of a particular, they can only write to like star publish or whatever. I think you can do that as wildcard stuff. Even if someone did manage to replace this, it would usually be game over for other things, but you want to contain damage as much as possible. I'm really kind of talking about this because I know that some people will detract and say, curling something, what I'm about to show you, curling a script into bash is a bad idea. And, there are reasons why that might be right. But if you trust all the resources and you trust where things are getting pushed and you trust all that, it's a matter of how far you trust that, right? If you want to be 100% paranoid and, only publish deployment stuff to really kind of tightly sealed locations and have it very, very specifically shaped, that's by all means put in the effort and make that happen. This is really kind of for demonstration purposes. So what I'm going to show you is actually how this would work. Let's stop this container. I want to show you what there should be an actions thing. So we're going to say stop. Oh, right. Okay. So this is called peaceful pub. There we go. Now this guy's going to stop. What I want to show you is what the deployment service could be doing on its side to basically run deployments. So somebody curls a request to this deployment service, and they would call CI actions, and let's just say latest, right? So we're going to get the latest SHA out, publish, and we're going to copy this. Sorry. ADOS S3 copy dash. I'm having a bit of a brain fart. Yeah, so right, okay. There you go, yep. So go back to this guy, this becomes that becomes the other thing, and there you go. Now that is our script, right? And it has the SHAs plugged in appropriately. And what we can do is we can pipe this to bash, and you'll see that this actually executes everything that we need to do in order to run it. Now this looks like it needs a bit of tweaking. Invalid container name. So we can't. One of the things I had done was that I had named the container with this SHA, but that's totally fine, right? Like, let's actually try to munge that out. So we'll open up a branch. So git status git cd actions git checkout dash b or git ret. We're gonna pull down latest. Then we're going to say, okay, fix deployment script. And then all we're going to do is, let's see here, dash o, topic, sorry, mbr dash o, bin publish deployment. There we go. And let's just nuke that, right? Stop. Stop using invalid names for containers. Right. So at least we get to do a little bit of something in this video. And really what this is going to do ultimately is allow us to pipe that file directly down into bash or shell and then run it those specific actions. So we can tweak deployments in this manner. And what I'm going to do in the meantime, right, because this is fine to merge, is I'm going to say, let's copy that action to a deploy script, right? Let's open the deploy script. Let's get rid of this thing. Let's run the deploy script. Right. And there you go. It's running that image we downloaded, which was the artifact that we associated with this deployment artifact, the release artifact we associated with this deployment artifact. And now it's available. And in fact, we can ping it. That's awesome. So that's sort of the first step, right? And the deployment service is all you need to sort of tie this off. And then anything that you write, whether it's a script or a raw curl request or whatever that hits that thing, that's menial now, right? Having some deployment service, deployment artifact, release artifact, keeping these all separate, make then changing where I want to go to a specific deployment easy. So I can say docker stop docker psqa, so just stop everything because I can't remember the name. And let's say I specifically want you know, a version from before. So perhaps I go to merge commits, right? And I go to, oh, this guy failed actually. Why did he fail? Something is not happy here. Oh, I think this looks like a network error. Yeah. So we can cancel this and rebuild it if we truly want to. But we can go to any of these merge ones, or in fact any of these branch ones too, and we can say, okay, well, if I want to go to this specific version, right? Here's that SHA. Let's do that AWS S3 copy S3 CI. Oops, make the same mistake. S3 actions. Let's paste this guy in. Publish. And we're gonna put it down to this deploy script again, and let's just run that deploy script, right? And that works. And you'll see that it's exactly the version that we gave. So how cool is that, right? Like, now we have a really simple way to describe both how do I get a specific thing, right? That particular image, which I could do separately, because the deployment script doesn't have to use Docker, right? We could have actually had a golden binary, right? A golden binary means a binary that you trust, that you've built and you've kept really safe from kind of manipulation or harm. And I can muck around with that container, or excuse me, that image, but I can also have something where I can easily tell a deployment service or whatever, I want to deploy just this thing to this server or this service or this thing. I toyed around with the idea of having like a DigitalOcean droplet where we have the deployment server running and you know, kind of tweaked it to get it to work. But really, it's just automating away what this is. It's literally creating a service that just has 2 endpoints and just lets you kind of plug and play from there. It's not super complicated. So that was pretty quick, and that's all to it. I think the only thing left for me to talk about in this video series would be matrix builds, I think. And if people really, really want to talk about doing that deployment service. If I did go that route, I really want to talk about it from the perspective of having concurrency taken care of. And I would probably switch over from recording out published artifacts on S3 over to something like a managed database, and we could kind of temporarily do that just for a video. I could pay for something. Or we could go look at another CI service and quickly set it up, and then just have like a step that says, okay, build this Docker file and push it up to some place, and then after you've authenticated with that, come back and push a publish step. Oh, that reminds me, there is one more thing that we did that was important. So what we did was we added this line, which was neat, because as it stood, build Docker image, publish deployment artifact, test, build, they're all happening at the same time for the sake of parallelization. We don't want that in terms of this step. We want this step to depend on building the Docker image, and we only want to publish deployment artifacts when the release artifact is built. In other words, we don't want to produce deployment artifacts that when deployed don't actually have a release artifact available to them. Now, this may not always be the case. Like maybe you have a pruning policy on wherever you keep your Docker images, right? maybe you don't keep all of them. So that is, again, going back to the idea of having little oases or islands of deployment artifacts that just may not work anymore because things have just drastically changed enough in many different regards. And in fact, I wrote an article recently that I'll put in the description about this very topic and why you would want to keep these two things distinct. But other than that, that largely might finish up this series. And if I do something on matrix builds, I will probably do it just as a quick 5 to 10 minute discussion, right? Because it doesn't take a really long time to talk about. And the purpose of it is purely just to test compatibility with different things. Discussing backwards compatibility is a larger issue in and of itself. So yeah, that's it. And I hope this has helped. So talk to you later.